With the World Wide Web at our fingertips, we are countless times smarter than without. The only limitation that we have is speed. Neuralink essentially turns you into a living, breathing Alexa that can control pretty much anything with an internet connection. Video games, drones, cars, all powered through thought. Musk's mission to merge humans with AI is a pretty crazy concept to wrap your head around. But if you need to answer a question, your brain will just know it, because it has untapped access to the internet, just like how you currently have untapped access to your own knowledge.
So what's the web? It used to be difficult to explain what the web would be like. Now it's difficult to explain why it was difficult.
In 1980, when we used fax machines to share documents and travel agencies to book flights and hotels, Tim Berners-Lee, a young Oxford graduate, first came to CERN as an independent IT professional to computerize CERN's proton synchrotrons control system.
But back in the 1980s, at CERN, it was an exciting place to be. Lots and lots of information systems on different computers, on different networks, all incompatible. So the idea was that one should be able to communicate by sharing information.
He needed to understand a mass of information and how to link people, hardware and software. For that, he wrote a program and named it Enquire, after a Victorian reference book he remembered from his childhood for giving easy access to a mass of useful information. Then he went back to the UK. When he returned to CERN as a fellow in 1984, the laboratory had grown to become a leading centre for data network, and he wrote software that ran over them. In 1989, he saw an opportunity to join hypertext with the internet.
So CERN was an interesting place to be. It was advanced. It was somewhere where in 1989 most people had some sort of a workstation on their desk, which was unusual then, and a place where the internet, the network connectivity had just arrived. Well, the network connectivity had been there for a while.
Using similar ideas to those underlying the Enquire system, Tim wrote the first proposal for the World Wide Web in March 1989 and his second proposal in May 1990. Together with Belgian systems engineer Robert Caillot, this was formalized as a management proposal in November 1990. By the end of 1990, Tim Berners-Lee had the first web server and browser up and running on his next computer at CERN. In 1991, the first web server outside of Europe was up at SLAC, the Stanford Linear Accelerator Center in California. Many would follow. In 1993, CERN management decided that the web should act as an open standard for all to use.
The 30th of April 1993 is the date on the document with which CERN, the European Particle Physics Lab, gave up the right to charge royalties for World Wide Web technology. It's an important date, and it's an important document. It allowed the web to take off. And there are things that we can do now which we just couldn't do before. So the web we have. If we had not had that document from CERN, we would not have the web. I'd like to take this opportunity of thanking CERN for being the place that it is, for being the place where I was allowed to play with the World Wide Web, to write those first few programs and have such a lot of fun. I hope everybody is having a lot of fun now and dreaming up lots of ideas. And I'm sure that lots of exciting things will come out of CERN in unexpected ways.
Originally, to start with, if you connect people up and you take away the national boundaries and just leave humanity connected, it will naturally become better.
The web has created opportunity for abuse, given a voice to those who spread hatred, and made all kinds of crime easier to commit.
The question is, do particular social media sites, because of the way they're designed, do they in fact lead to a constructive conversation? Or do some sites bring out the worst in people?
You know, Monkey has been able to control the computer with its brain. Just, yeah.
So what you're
the beeps you're hearing are real-time signals from the neural link in Gertrude's head. So this neural link connects to neurons that are in her snout. So whenever she snuffles around and touches something with her snout, that sends out neural spikes, which are detected here. And so on the screen, you can see each of the spikes from the 1,024 electrodes. And then if she snuffles around, touches her snout in the ground, or you kind of feed her some food, pigs love food, then you can see the neurons will fire much more than when you're not touching the snout. And that's what's making the beeping sound. All right, cool. So as you can see, we have a healthy and happy pig, initially shy, but obviously high energy and you know, kind of loving life. And she's had the implant for 2 months. So this is a healthy and happy pig with an implant that is 2 months old and working well. Yeah. All right, cool. And then we actually have, I hope this works, so we said, well, what if we do 2 Neuralink implants? And we've been able to do dual Neuralink implants in, actually I think 3 pigs at this point, and we have a couple of them here. And we've been able to show that you can actually have multiple Neuralinks implanted, and again, healthy and happy and indistinguishable from a normal pig. So it's possible to have multiple links in your head and have them all be sending out signals and be working well. All right, so we just showed you a demonstration of reading brain activity. And let's see, probably see that. As I was saying, each of those dots represents a neural spike, and the blue chart at the bottom is showing an accumulation of neural spikes in that region. So in terms of additional brain reading activity, when we have, say, one of our pigs on a treadmill, pig on a treadmill, it's a funny concept, really. And we take the readings from the neurons, and we try to predict the position of the joints. And so we have the predicted position of the joints, and then we measure the actual position of the joints. You can see that they're almost exactly aligned. So we're able, with a wireless neural implant, to actually predict the position of all of the limbs in the pig's body with very high accuracy.
These pair of neurotech researchers had developed a device that could potentially help people suffering from brain injuries. Investors didn't show a great deal of interest, but in 2016, a mysterious unknown investor came along with an offer to purchase the rights to the name Neuralink for tens of thousands of dollars. They sold, and that investor later turned out to be multi-billionaire Elon Musk. Fast forward to the 27th of March 2017, and Musk announces that he will be backing a new brain-computer interface venture, Neuralink. The ultimate goal of this company is to merge man with machine, fusing human intelligence with artificial intelligence to bring humanity up to a higher level of cognitive reasoning. Without this technology, Musk argues that humans will be unable to keep pace with advances in artificial intelligence, and that humans will become the intellectual equivalent of the house cat. So far, Musk has been calling this brain-computer interface technology neurolace. In essence, neurolace is an ultra-thin mesh that is implanted into the skull and forms a body of electrodes which are able to monitor brain function. It's not entirely clear at this time how far along the technology is in its development phase, but eventually, neurolace should enable humans to upload or download information directly from a computer. In order to insert neurolace, a tiny needle which contains a rolled up mesh is placed inside the skull, whereby the mesh is then injected. The mesh unravels upon injection, encompassing the brain. Gradually, the neurolace will integrate itself with the human brain, creating the perfect symbiosis between man and machine. So far, neurolace has been tested on live mice. Upon autopsy, researchers found little negative consequences associated with the insertion of this mesh-like structure.
The current medical research, we'll just go through what is the state-of-the-art in medical research, and then what's the state-of-the-art in what consumers or people in general can get. So the current medical research has shown that you can read neurons in a human's brain. So there's something called the Utah array, which has about 100 channels per array. But it's like, kind of like it's a bed of rigid spikes that's literally inserted with an air hammer. So, you know, that's slightly discomforting, I think. And there's wires and a box on your head, and so it's some infection risk. And obviously, it will look pretty weird if you walk around with boxes on your head. And in order to use it, you have to have an expert medical professional there, and it's only been done in a few dozen people. So. But it is served as an important proof of concept that this can be done. So we did want to point this out and show that this actually does work. It's just not something that the average person could use effectively. And nonetheless, this has greatly helped over 150,000 people, and it's actually, just despite being somewhat of a brute force approach, it has been very effective for a lot of people. And this is what's currently available. So we want to radically improve this by multiple orders of magnitude, improve it by a factor of 100, then 1,000, then 10,000. So going into the Neuralink architecture, what we've done over the past year is dramatically simplify the device. So we about a year ago, we had a device which had multiple parts, including a piece that it had to sort of sit behind your ear, and it was complex, and you wouldn't still look totally normal. You'd have a thing behind your ear. So we've simplified this to simply something that is about the size of a large coin, and it goes in your skull, replaces a piece of skull, and the wires then connect within a few centimeters or about an inch away from the device. And this is sort of what it looks like. Yeah. This is our little device. That thing at the bottom is just to hold the threads in place because they're just like little fine wires. I mean, frankly, to sort of simplify this, what we're, I mean, it's more complicated than this, but it's, in a lot of ways, it's kind of like a Fitbit in your skull with tiny wires. So, and it's, yeah, so our current prototype, version 0.9, has about 1,000 channels. So that's about 100 times better than the next best consumer device that's available. And it's a 23 millimeters by 8 millimeters. It actually fits quite nicely in your skull because your skull is about 10 millimeters thick. So it fits, it goes flush with your skull, it's invisible, and all you can see afterwards is this tiny scar. And if it's under your hair, you can't see it at all. In fact, I could have a Neuralink right now, and you wouldn't know. Maybe I do. So, and it's also got all the things that you would expect to see, the sensors you'd expect to see in a smartwatch or a phone, like notional measurement, temperature, pressure. So there's actually a lot of functions that this device could do related to monitoring your health and warning you about a possible heart attack or stroke or other damage, as well as sort of convenience features like playing music. You can do a lot. Anyway, so it's also inductively charged. So it's charged in the same way that you charge a smartwatch or a phone. And so you can use it all day, charge it at night, and have full functionality. So you would really, you know, it would be completely seamless, and yeah, no wires. In terms of getting a link, so that, you need to have the device, a great device, and you also need to have a great robot that puts in the electrodes and does the surgery. So you want the surgery to be as automated and as possible, and the only way you can achieve the level of precision that's needed is with an advanced robot. So we're really looking for great people who can help develop both the device and the robot. And we feel confident about getting the link procedure, the installation of a link, done in under an hour. So you can basically go in the morning and leave the hospital in the afternoon. And it can be done without general anesthesia. So in terms of getting a link, like I said, it's essentially you open a piece of skull, you remove about a coin-sized piece of skull, and then the robot inserts the electrodes. We'll talk more about that later. Then the device replaces the portion of skull that was removed, and we basically close that up with actually super glue, which is how a lot of wounds are closed, and then you can just walk around right afterwards. It's pretty cool. So this is our surgical robot. And we actually ultimately want this robot to do essentially the entire surgery. So in everything from incision, removing the skull, inserting the electrodes, placing the device, and then closing things up and having you ready to leave. So we want to have a fully automated system. So this shows you at sort of close-up view, which I think is actually not too gruesome, of the electrodes being inserted in the brain. And if you look closely, you'll see that it's a little counterintuitive that if the electrodes are inserted very carefully, that there's no bleeding. And so if you have very tiny electrodes, and if they're inserted very carefully, so that the robot actually images the brain and makes sure to avoid any veins or arteries, so that the electrodes can be inserted with no noticeable damage. So you will have no noticeable neural damage in inserting the link. Yeah, like you sort of think like if you stab something with a wire, surely it will bleed, but actually at a really small scale, it does not.
All of our senses, sight, hearing, touch, smell, taste, are electrical signals sent by neurons to our brain. But sometimes the signals are not wired correctly. Neuralink wants to rewire the circuit so that the paralyzed walk, the blind see, the deaf hear, as well as treat other neurological disorders such as depression, insomnia, Alzheimer's. The battery lasts a full day and can be charged inductively as you sleep, possibly by wearing a nightcap, according to Musk, although it may not look exactly like this one. The prototype is different than 2019's. That one required an external earpiece, whereas the latest version involves just the chip sitting in the skull. The wires, or threads, are 10 times thinner than human hair and represent electrodes. The electrodes figure out what's happening in the brain by reading the signals sent by the neurons and then stimulating as many neurons as possible. This technology is not new, but what makes Neuralink drastically different from other neural interfaces is that it will insert significantly more electrodes to stimulate neurons on a scale never seen before. Neuralink has to get a stamp of approval from the U.S. Food and Drug Administration to start human trials, but there are some signs of chaos at the young company. Former employees told Stat, an American health-oriented news website, that rushed timelines were often clashing with science's slow pace. Musk said last year he hoped the trials could begin by the end of 2020, which seems highly unlikely. And then there are the privacy issues that scientists have been urging governments to address, including what data should be collected and how it will be kept safe. So it will likely be a long time before this becomes a reality. But Neuralink has plans to expand rapidly. It has a massive space, but only 100 employees. In a few years, it expects to grow to 10,000, which would be more than the number of staff currently at SpaceX. Although the scientists and engineers will continue to work toward curing brain disorders, that's not the main reason Musk created Neuralink. He has repeatedly spoken of the fear that humans will be overtaken by artificial intelligence, based on the hypothesis that if AI becomes super intelligent, it could be difficult or impossible for humans to control and potentially result in our extinction. So his solution is to sync up the human brain with AI and create a symbiotic relationship. Although Musk has many ambitious projects on the go, this one seems different than the others. SpaceX wants to build a city on Mars, changing where we live. The Boring Company is building underground tunnels, changing how we travel. But Neuralink is changing us, making us in many ways superhuman.
The future's going to be weird.
And that may be an understatement.
Between running the show at Tesla and sending his SpaceX rockets into outer space, it's surprising that Elon Musk still has time for his many ambitious side hustles. His latest bit on the side, Neuralink, has flown under the radar for the past few years. But it's now captivating the world's attention for a reason that's as intriguing as it is scary. Musk suggests that Neuralink will facilitate his mission to merge humans with artificial intelligence and subsequently save the human race from AI. Most of Musk's businesses run off the backbone of forward-thinking technology, but one piece of tech that Musk openly fears is AI. He firmly believes that artificial intelligence is the biggest threat to the human race, and that advancements in its technology is a dangerous game for us all to be playing. It sounds a little far-fetched to think that AI could literally wipe out life as we know it, but Musk isn't alone in his worries. In its current narrow form, AI can already outperform humans at literally any mental task, from solving equations to playing chess. But if we were to unleash its full potential and develop AI into a wide form of intelligence, it could and would outperform humans in every way imaginable, especially if we partner it up with robotics. Musk sees only one way of escaping the impending doom of an AI-facilitated human extinction, and that is to somehow merge our own intelligence with machine intelligence. Without realizing, we are all already somewhat merged with machine intelligence by merely owning a smartphone and having access to the internet. Searching for information using the internet is slow in the way that we have to find, read, and process before we can relay any information back out. All of this takes time. The goal of Neuralink is to make this connection between man and machine seamless. And the best way to do that is to physically merge the two together using a microchip brain implant. So what exactly is this first-gen brain implant? The threads are embedded into essential parts of the brain, where they can decipher messages that are transmitted between neurons. The threads then relay that information back to the chip, where it records the impulses, evaluates the data, and then stimulates its own responses. The chip and wires not only read the information that the brain communicates, but also inputs information back into the brain as well. A single Neuralink chip will be able to connect and communicate with 1,000 different brain cells, and an individual will be able to house as many as 10 implants, totaling 10,000 connections. Testing so far of the N1 chip has been limited, but a restricted version with just 256 electrodes did see human patients controlling computer cursors, speech synthesizers, and robotic limbs with nothing but the power of their mind. Currently, the best FDA-approved brain implant has just 10 connections. So with this in mind, it's clear that the potential of Neuralink's chip is pretty much unrivaled. In the early stages, the installation of the chip will be done by the hand of a brain surgeon, but eventually, the entire procedure will be machine-operated. Neuralink are putting as much effort into the design and development of their robotic surgical device as the chips and wires themselves. As the Neuralink N1 chip develops and gets smarter though, the possibilities get far more interesting. The possibilities of Neuralink's AI implants are endless, and that's not a figure of speech. AI's knowledge literally has no endpoint because it's forever learning, working things out, and becoming better, all at a rate that we can't even comprehend. To paint a picture for you, with the help of Neuralink, you'll be able to do everything that your computer or smartphone can, but directly through thought. With Neuralink, you'll automatically know everything that you'd usually need to ask without even having to pop the question. Date, time, weather, geographical location, Brad Pitt's height in inches, anything. But Neuralink is not all about information. It's also about interaction and communication. Because the embedded AI can wirelessly transmit electrode signals, users will essentially be able to communicate with other computers and chip-wearing people with mind power alone.
This is where brain-machine interfaces come in, and they change everything. A brain-machine interface, or BMI, is composed of two things: a brain and a machine. The machine could be anything: a phone, a computer, a bionic arm, anything that provides you with sensory inputs from the outside world or an external source. These inputs are then returned back into your brain, where you can process them. But you need something artificial in your head to return this data to. Now don't worry, it's not like putting a CPU inside your head. It's actually quite tiny. It works well, but there's a pretty high probability that complications will occur over time. Seizures, strokes, and even more. It may fix one issue, but it's probable that multiple other issues will show up, and is why a robot is needed for Neuralink's procedure to be successful. Neuralink is taking a different approach.
So obviously Elon has plans to get into everybody's brain, but he's not getting into mine because I'm not getting it. And they started out saying it would be injected, and all of a sudden now it needs to be surgically implanted into your brain. Even cutting an incision, I mean, come on, I wouldn't do it. I don't know how many people would. It could still possibly be injected into you. You don't know. And with all these mandatory COVID vaccines coming down the pipeline, along with any other future vaccines, we'll have to worry about if this is in there to be injected into us, as far as I'm concerned, because when they first introduced this stuff, they introduced it saying that they would inject a mesh-like thing into you, into your brain. I don't believe anything that they're saying about this robot having to do the surgery now, because he probably just will do the same thing, inject you, and then you'll have it. But they're acting like it's going to perform this big old surgery.